Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Gracie X. And recently I wrote an article for the Huffington Post, and it got over 25,000 likes in 48 hours. The article was about a state-of-the-art way to love that I believe can improve our relationships and marriages. The article was about compersion. And I first discovered compersion about 10 years ago. I was in the backyard with my husband, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and we were talking and giggling and drinking wine. And I decided to reopen the file on something that had happened 2 weeks prior. And what had happened 2 weeks prior was my husband got an email from a former business colleague, a beautiful woman who was in town, and asked him if he could meet her for a drink. So I said, sure. And that night we gave our 2 little kids a bath, and then we plucked them out of the tub and we read them bedtime stories and then said goodnight. And my husband went off to meet this woman for a drink. And I climbed into bed and got to watch my favorite forensic shows and fell asleep at about 11 p.m. And at about 1 a.m. I woke up and my husband wasn't at home. So I called his cell phone and I got his voicemail. I left him a message. And then I fell back asleep again, and I woke up at 3 a.m. when I heard his key in the door. But I was too tired to talk, so I rolled over and went back to sleep. And the next morning we got up and we got our kids off to school and we came back to the house, and I said, so what happened? And he said, nothing happened. And he was getting kind of a Bill Clinton kind of a vibe, so I let it go. But out in the backyard on that day, I decided to reopen the file. And I started talking to him about it and pulling detail after detail, and I felt like one of those CSI detectives, and I realized how brilliant those guys are because they never talk about jail time, and they completely relax you by empathizing with you. And in this case, I was actually sincere. I just really wanted to know what had happened. And it seemed absurd to lie. I mean, we were best friends. We had known each other for over 20 years. We had created life together, our beautiful children. And I just wanted him to be honest with me. What had happened on that night? So finally, he took a deep breath and he said, okay, I had sex with her. And there was a pause. And I said, wow, that's great. And he was surprised, and I was surprised. But this was a time in our life when we were under tremendous stress. We were taking care of a sick relative. We had financial stress. We were taking care of our 2 little kids. And we were not having very much romance in the bedroom. And I was actually really happy for him that he had had some pleasure. And immediately, the next thought that leapt into my mind was, wow, I could never explain this to my best friend. She will think that there's something wrong with me or something wrong with my marriage. At the time, I did not realize that this was a thing, that compersion is a word, a feeling, an idea that is part of the polyamorous community. Polyamory meaning loving many, being multi-partnered. And the definition of compersion is you're at home and your husband comes home or wife from spending the afternoon with their lover, and they come in and they're really happy and you're happy for them. That's compersion. And compersion can be a part of a monogamous relationship. I believe that it can. Your spouse is off, they're doing something that they love all day, like skiing, they come home, they're filled with life, they have all this energy to share, they're happy, you're happy for them. This is very much what parents often feel with their kids. Your kid comes home, they've had a triumph, you are so thrilled that they're thriving, that they're doing really well in the world. What happened for us, my husband and I, is that we went on a whole relationship odyssey. And this quote from Margaret Mead has tremendous meaning for me because there was a way as a nuclear family that we were becoming fairly isolated, and there was some loneliness, and we did not have a huge extended family with all the intergenerational support that some people do. And we wanted more family. So we opened our marriage and we started to date other people. And within a year, we had taken our single family home and transformed it into a duplex. My husband was living on one side with his new girlfriend, Valerie, and I was living on the other side with my new boyfriend, Oz. And when the kids wanted their dad, they went to that side of the house. When they wanted their mom, they went to my side of the house. And we were one big, happy, chosen family. And it was idyllic. My message, though, is not, let's all open our marriage and become polyamorous. My message, what I really discovered on this relationship odyssey, is that there is so much more pleasure available in our marriages and relationships. And one of the secrets to this pleasure, to accessing this pleasure, is compersion. It is a state-of-the-art way to love. And so I started writing and being extremely fascinated by people who were loving each other in this way because they were obviously experiencing a lot of pleasure. And joy together and vitality. So the first thing that I noticed, people who were loving in this way were showing up authentically themselves. And by that, I do not mean perfect. They were very human people, very flawed, but they felt comfortable in their own skin, and they felt separate from the people that they loved and entitled to their own thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires. And they accepted that the other person that they were in relationship with also had separate thoughts, feelings, needs, and desires. And this created a spaciousness in their relationship that they wanted to forge, that there was desire and curiosity to be close to the other person. This is very much what we think about when we have the word the honeymoon period. And the honeymoon period, things are new, things are fresh, you're excited to be with each other. What is so interesting about the honeymoon period is that culturally and collectively, we really believe that the honeymoon period will die. It must die, and it will be replaced by a period of more stability and settledness, and sometimes boredom. But I don't believe that the honeymoon period must die. I believe with this state-of-the-art way of love, the curiosity and the passion can be reborn again and again and again and again in relationship. And what I noticed is there are 4 healthy habits of patterns that people are doing when they're living in this way. And the first foundation of the relationship pyramid is communication. So much has been written about communication. I have a story that I think illustrates why it's so important. My husband came home from work one day. He was really tired, and we decided to take the kids and go down the street to our favorite Italian restaurant. So we all started walking down the sidewalk, and the kids started to run, and I started to run with them, and we got to the Italian restaurant a few minutes before my husband did. And so my husband walked in, and he said to me, you abandoned me. And I was shocked. And I mean, abandon is such a charged word. It's like you abandoned baby birds with broken wings on the sidewalk. And I felt annoyed, and we kind of went back and forth. And then we said, look, let's talk about this later. So that night in the bedroom, we started talking about it. And he said to me, Grace, when I go off to work, I miss you. And when I come home, I'm tired and I just want to look at you and talk with you and hold your hand and reconnect with you. And I said, wow, I didn't know that. I can do that. So communication, when you use I statements, when you take responsibility for your feelings, it can really connect. It can make for more intimacy, more connection. The next place on the relationship pyramid is staying current. What do I mean by staying current? A friend of mine called me in the middle of the night, very upset. She was watching Frontline with her husband, and it was a show on Prozac. And there was some outrageous statistic on Prozac, like 1 in every 7 Americans are taking Prozac. And my friend said her husband turned to her and said, 1 in every 7 Americans is taking Prozac? I don't know anybody taking Prozac. Do you know anybody taking Prozac? And she said, she looked at him and said, you jerk, I'm taking Prozac. So you can see, when you're not communicating, when you're not current with each other, you really can miss vast places between each other. The next place on the relationship pyramid is being attached. What does it mean to be attached? Again, attachment is such a big theory. I first really understood attachment when I had my daughter, and she was just 24 hours old. And when we had a home birth, and when I first delivered her, I started breastfeeding, and then every few hours I would breastfeed her, and she would cry, and I was the only one that could soothe her. And I felt like, okay, well, she likes me. I'm dinner. I'm the milk cow. And I didn't really think that much about it. And then my mother-in-law came to help us. And I breastfed my baby girl, and I gave her to my mother-in-law, and she went downstairs. And a few minutes later, I came downstairs to get something. And my mother-in-law was coming up the stairs holding my baby girl, and I was coming down. And we passed each other on the stairway, and my mother-in-law said, look, Grace, the baby's tracking you with her eyes. And I looked at my baby girl, and I went this way, and her eyes moved with me, and I went that way, and her eyes moved with me. And it moved me, and I started holding her more and gazing into her eyes, and this connection started, this bond and attachment that was love. It was also survival. She needed me and I needed her. And this is, for me, it was a huge epiphany because I had never felt that kind of secure bond with my parents. And really, this was a new place for me. And there is a way that we judge this place, that it is okay for babies to be that needy, but it's not okay for adults. You've got to grow out of it. But we crave this. And it's interesting, when my kids became older, they wanted a puppy dog, and my husband and I said, oh my God, we can't do another thing dependent on us. And so we said, let's get him a snake. So we went to the pet store, and the guy at the pet store said, don't get a snake. The snake will never love you. Get some hamsters. So we got some hamsters, and our kids love the hamsters. They would pet them and snuggle with them. We are biologically hardwired for this as mammals. We need this kind of intimate attachment. The next place on the pyramid is reciprocity. Reciprocity, I love this image of reciprocity, the yin-yang symbol, the eternity symbol. in every state of the art, loving relationship, reciprocity is happening. And what it is that you are giving and you are receiving at the same time, and there is a balance. And I learned how important this is when my daughter was 5 months old. My kids were a huge learning curve for me. And my husband and I were so happy being parents, and we were really annoyed with each other because we were convinced that the other person was slacking off and not keeping up their end of the workload. So my husband got out these yellow legal pads and we wrote down everything that we were doing, and then we switched legal pads, and we were so devastated to realize that we were both working equally hard. We were just doing different things. And my husband said at the time something really brilliant. He said, it is important that we have balance, but not necessarily symmetry. And what he meant by that is that we both have to be investing into the relationship, but we may not be doing the same things. And in fact, a lot of times in great partnerships, you're not doing the same things because you have different strengths, and so often you don't quite realize how much the other person is investing. This is so important to keep tabs on, because if you don't feel this balance and reciprocity, then what you have is relationship debt. Relationship debt is when you feel that what you're giving is better, or you're giving more than your spouse. And we see people who are in this place, after decades of marriage, and they're frozen in resentment. Because when you feel that relationship debt, there is no space for gratitude, and there is no hope for compersion. Because compersion is not sacrifice. Compersion is this organic feeling, a cup runneth over feeling of happiness and connection with your person, your mate, your beloved. And it is a magical way both to love and to be loved. And that is my speech on compersion. I thank you so much for listening. I feel compersion for this audience. You've been a great audience, and I thank you. Namaste.